Welcome to the Divorce View Talk Show. Our show is all about supporting you. Whether you're going through a divorce or after divorce, we're here in all parts of your life as far as legal advice, co-parenting, or even if you want to get back into the dating game. Hi, it's Joanie Winberg, certified human behavior consultant, divorce mentor, and founder of GettingAlongSolutions.com. So we have a great guest tonight, but I want to bring on my co-partner. I missed her last week, Rosalind Sadaka. I'm so glad you're here today.
Oh, thank you, Joanie. Always fun doing this with you. I'm Rosalind Sadaka. I'm a divorce and parenting coach and founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network for Parents and author of How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce. And tonight we have a guest who is a parenting educator and expert, and I'm really thrilled to have her expertise on board for all of you to learn from. Her name is Maggie McCauley, and her organization, her business is Wholehearted Parenting. Maggie, we're so glad to have you with us tonight.
Oh, Rosalind, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be on your show and to be working with you.
Well, we have a really excellent topic to talk about. Joanie, why don't you give us the title and let us know what we're going to be discussing.
Okay, well, I'm just thrilled you're here, Maggie, so welcome. It's called 3 Tips to Create a Calm Home in the Storm of Divorce. So, Maggie, kind of fill us in a little bit of how we came up with this title, but what's the meat behind it, so to speak? What are we going to be talking about?
Well, we're going to be talking about 3 things that folks who are going through a divorce, as well as anyone, can use. Because there are a lot of storms that we can encounter in our lives, and things can feel a little out of control, things can feel scary. So these are going to be 3 things that parents can do so that they can lead with, I would say, a generous heart while they are going through this storm of divorce, so that they can parent from a place of calm and a place of really listening to what's going on with their kids.
Well, and there's nothing more important than that, because we all know that when it comes to divorce, the kids are hurt the hardest, and they're innocent victims no matter what the situation is. So let's start with your first tip and see what we can talk about.
All right. Well, my first tip is a pretty broad topic, so you guys can keep me focused on this if you want to, because it's huge, and that is blame. Oftentimes we will blame others when, in situations like divorce, we can be blaming our former spouse, and when we don't have the self-acceptance to kind of step into that leadership and that power, it is very easy to get into a place where we're blaming others. And it becomes dicey during divorce for kids when they hear their parents blaming the other partner, blaming their other parent. And that doesn't give them the freedom to establish and maintain a relationship with their other parent. It's very confusing for kids. It also keeps parents locked in this blame game and in this cycle of blame, rather than really stepping into their own self-reliance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's such an important point, and too often I've seen kids desperately hurt because they have an allegiance to both parents. They love both parents, and when one parent is putting down the other, part of them wants to support the parent, especially if one is hurt and crying and filled with high emotions. And then there's this guilt and embarrassment and confusion about, how could I love mom if dad's doing this? How could I be with dad if mom says that? And they're being so torn, it's heartbreaking to see what goes on. And of course, kids can't express all of that. We're understanding it as adults. They don't understand exactly what's going on for them, but it sure is happening.
It's so hard just to see that happening, and they're confused and feel, like you said, Ross, feeling guilty. And then they might feel that, okay, I'll join this parent, but then they go and visit the other parent and they hear the other side, and I just feel so bad for kids. They're so torn, and it's just a tough thing to see. I know we've all seen that. Maggie, anything that you want to share about that even more?
Yeah, I think, the thing about blame is that it will keep the parents stuck. It'll keep them from moving forward into that healthy co-parenting kind of relationship with their former spouse. So it has to do a bit with taking the time to look inside, to really explore the issues that come up during divorce, that come up with the breakup of any relationship, and those are big issues. It could have to do with not feeling supported, or having a belief that people leave me, or that my relationships don't last, or that some belief or judgment about men or about women. So if parents take the time to explore what's going on inside themselves, it could be through a class or through coaching or through therapy or just through meditation and reflection, then they really have a great opportunity to explore the beliefs that they have that really aren't serving them any longer.
Mm-hmm.
It is a huge upset when a relationship is dissolving. And it can be very challenging to take responsibility. It also can be very liberating if people will take the time to look inside and see what's going on for them, because there's a lot of growth that can happen from that. Also, when parents process their stuff and don't dump it on their kids, if they can handle their stuff in a supportive environment, whether again that's a class or coaching or therapy or sitting down with a loving friend, then there's a real boundary that doesn't bleed that over onto their kids. Because you're absolutely right, kids will begin to absorb that and somehow feel responsible for it, or like they need to step in and do something. They don't like to see their parents hurting. So it is wonderful to share your feelings and your emotions and what you're going through with your kids. It's also great to allow them to do the same. And it's great to share your feelings after you've handled the upset, after you've moved through the blame, to share how you're feeling hurt or you may be feeling angry. So you're acting from a very conscious place. You're not acting from those feelings. You're expressing those feelings fully and yet not acting from them. Does that make sense?
Would you say, Maggie, so if you were just letting them know that, sometimes Mommy feels sad and we all feel sad and that's okay, but we're going to make it through this, we're going to be okay, and there's sometimes that we might feel angry, we might feel sad. So you're saying something like that to express to them, to let them know that you're still human and that happens to Mommy or Daddies too, right?
Right, and to keep Mom or Dad from walking around feeling like they need to be this icon or this paragon, this total, there's kind of a misunderstanding about strength, that I've got to be strong through this, and sometimes people interpret strong as not revealing how they feel, and so they shut down their heart. So if parents can process, not in front of their kids, but process their emotions and what they're feeling and process the upset that they have, it's easier to share open-heartedly with their kids what they're feeling. Like I remember when my mom died, that a friend pointed out that I had been talking to her and I was crying. And as soon as my daughter walked into the room, I kind of like bucked up and wiped my tears away and was strong, Mommy. And she said, "Did you notice that you did that?" And it was like, oh, I didn't. And so that was a whole place for me to go, is why did I feel that I needed to show up as this strong mommy rather than mommy who just lost her mommy. Mm-hmm. And that it was okay to cry in front of my daughter and say, hey, I really miss your grandmother. Yeah. So it's great to share those feelings without a huge charge on the feeling. There's a real difference between saying, I feel really angry today about the divorce, and going, you know, your dad is a real blankety blank. Here's what he did to me. All right. So that keeps mom stuck in a real victim kind of place without taking that responsibility and without seeing her part in the divorce and her part in the relationship. And so it keeps her stuck, and it vilifies dad and really doesn't allow for a full sharing of what's really going on.
And damages the psyche of the kids at the same time, making it even worse.
Yeah.
That was a very important point to make. What is the second tip that you have for us?
That is allowing children to freely express how they feel without any kind of judgment or criticism from mom or dad. Allowing them to say, hey, I don't like this, or I'm angry, or why did you guys do this? Without mom or dad, and this again is why it's so important for mom and dad to process what they are going through. And that doesn't mean stuff it or hide it or close their heart. It means really to feel it and allow themselves that time to feel it. So that then when their kids express how they feel, it isn't there isn't a charge or a trigger for mom and dad, because it's not meant to trigger guilt or ill will towards the other parent or come back defensively with the kids. If mom and dad can just listen, not to fix anything, not to do anything, okay? They don't even have to take any action unless requested, but just to really listen and to create that environment for warm listening, so kids know they have that freedom to say, I feel really upset. I don't like this.
I just love the way that to me it's a freedom, just as if you want people to listen to us or ourselves. To me, you're just providing that space and giving that person the freedom to share and be who they are without the judgment, without the guilt. And that is such a gift that you can give your children.
And so mom and dad need to not take what their kids say personally. There's a friend has a little acronym that he uses in courses that he teaches called QTIP, which is quit taking it personally.
I love it.
It's great. It's great. So when mom and dad don't take it personally, kids do have that freedom to fully express what they're feeling without fear of blowback, and without fear that they're hurting mom and dad. So when mom and dad have really allowed themselves that time and that support to handle all of their emotions, they've modeled that for their kids. And they can allow them then that space to express. So
I almost think of, especially if you've got little ones and you're going through some tough times, you know, get on the couch, a warm, of course, up here it's cold, so I'm saying warm blanket, you know, and just get cuddly, or just, you know, have that feeling that they feel safe and heard. To me, you know, that will take them so far, you know, down the line in their life.
Yeah.
Maggie, is there a difference when your child is intentionally trying to be hurtful and saying I hate you because they really do, and you're listening and you're hearing things that are frightening to you that you don't want to be hearing, and they're more than venting their anger, but they're expressing it directly to you without you? Is there a different line, and is there a different way to respond to that?
That's a great question, and what that a child is doing is blaming. So that's another example of blame. where the child is then blaming the parent. And so if the parent feels defensive or feels like they need to come back, if the parent then feels angry themselves, it's time to step back, do the Q-tip, quit taking it personally, and acknowledge what that child is feeling. You sound really, really angry and upset, and then set that limit of, I know that that's true, and it isn't going to be helpful for you to blame or say hurtful things to me. I'm happy to listen to you. I want to spend the time with you, and my request is that you not say hurtful things to me.
I think we have to package that whole direction that you just gave us, so parents can carry that around them and say, okay, I don't take it personally. Now what am I supposed to do? Because I know it's hurtful when you hear that from your child. I hate you, and so it's like, okay, what do? I want to make sure I'm doing the correct thing. That's a great question, Ross, really.
One of the things that we talk about in the parenting courses that I teach is this concept of mistaken goals that kids have. And sometimes we call those misbehaviors. Mistaken goal is like when an upset happens in the relationship. And what Roz described is a classic example of what we call revenge. And that's where a child is believing that other people, maybe mom and dad, are going to hurt them, and so they need to hurt first or hurt back. Mm-hmm. And so when a child is saying something hurtful back, the step is to really repair what's going on in the relationship. As challenging as that may feel, stuff may come up big for the parent. No parent wants to hear, I hate you. But that's where it's very important for a parent to detach. And by detaching, I don't mean that you're not emotionally involved or that you give up or that you don't care. You unattach from or detach from being reactive with your child. Yeah. And that is a real practice. And so when parents are tired, they're stressed out, and it could be because of what we're calling tonight the storm of divorce. With all the chaos, they could be moving. There's a lot of things that are different. Maybe bank accounts have changed. Maybe a parent has gone back to work. They've had to move or chosen to move. All of those things are incredibly stressful. Yeah. So that is when parents can be really reactive. And so it's important to nurture yourself, allow yourself as a parent that time to really be reflective, to really express, to get support for you, such as what you guys offer, which is wonderful. It's great to have a conversation about that, because that didn't even used to exist for parents.
Yes, thank you. And what's your third tip for us?
Let's see, what was it? I got to look at my little list here.
It's feeling that things are falling apart, how to avoid handling chaos, and feeling overwhelmed. I know we touched upon that a little bit, but we can certainly expand on it.
Great. There's a great book I want to recommend for everyone first, and that's called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. And her work is absolutely phenomenal. She's a Buddhist monk, and she writes from a very spiritual place, a very accepting and beautiful place. So I really recommend that to everyone to read that book.
Any parent, you would say.
Yeah, and when things aren't going the way that we like in life, when there's big things that are happening like divorce, or say there's a death in the family, there's a loss, which divorce is a loss. I mean, it's a loss of a relationship, it's a loss of how you envisioned your life, it's a loss of what you've envisioned your relationship to be. It's a huge loss. Things can feel chaotic. Things can feel scary because they feel out of control. And what we tend to do is kind of lock down when things feel out of control. And what Pema Chodron suggests, and what I'm going to suggest, is that we not do that. That we do what she calls leaning into it, which again goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, which is fully expressing what you're doing. Because what we don't lean into, we tend to like encapsulate, and it shows up someplace else bigger. It kind of will burst out later unexpectedly, and we don't move forward. So when things get chaotic, it can be a great time to lean into what you're feeling rather than trying to force yourself through it. Or I heard a phrase the other day that something was so hurtful for someone, they had to like take a razor to their heart and cut it out. I mean, I thought that was such a meaningful way of putting it. And sometimes we cover up our heart and like lock it down. So in moving through what feels like a very chaotic and upset part of life, keep your heart open and allow yourself the time to nurture you, to get the support that you need, and to fully feel what you're going through. A lot of people think if I let that open, it will never stop. I'll never stop crying.
Be vulnerable.
Yes, and being vulnerable is actually the key to strength. That really is strength, to allow yourself that kind of vulnerability.
So you're stepping into the situation rather than repressing it. You're stepping in, owning it, acknowledging it, and feeling it.
Yes.
And with the feeling comes a sense of empowerment, that I'm feeling this. It can't get any worse than this because I'm in it and feeling it, and now I can find ways of handling it.
And oftentimes when people think, you know, I'll start crying, I'll never stop, my heart is going to break, I'm going to fall apart, that really what happens is those times where you get into the crying and the big upset maybe last like a minute. And then you feel great afterwards. And your heart really doesn't break. It breaks.
We survive.
It breaks open. It breaks open. And so if you look at it as breaking open, it just feels, it can be very liberating.
Would you call it, and Roz and I talk about this all the time, it's really helping the person become conscious.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. It's being much more mindful, not reactive. It's sidestepping all that blame, being aware of where you may be blaming. It's really when you break that cycle of blame, you are incredibly conscious, because you need to be conscious of how you are doing it, and it's very, very liberating to do that.
Go ahead, Roz.
It's so tempting when you're feeling self-righteous to be judgmental, to point that finger and say, I know what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but, and then you have your point about your ex who destroyed your life, your children, your family, and everything else, and there's this ease about judging and getting into that blame game. So what do you say to someone who feels so self-righteous and vindicated about what they're doing?
Yeah. Well, they're hurt, and wow, did you hear that thunder?
Wow.
Oh my gosh, I was wondering what that was.
We're going to get a South Florida storm here in just a minute, but you know, it's not a peaceful place to be pointing the finger and come from a place of self-righteousness. And when you're in that place, you're not in a place of learning. You're in a place of what we call protection. And so the growth is going to happen from being vulnerable enough and brave enough to go to that place of learning. Because that is the conscious place to be. And that doesn't... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and if people can believe that, like you said, Roz, we get into that pointing the finger, but if people can believe that that feeling is really going to happen and that you will get over to the other side of the fence if you do the deal and do the work, that it will happen. And sometimes people just don't believe it yet. Anyway.
And what can be very helpful in talking to a parent who is in that place of self-righteousness is to just say, hey, are you aware? Are you aware that you're blaming? Or would you like that feedback? Maybe they don't want it.
Mm.
But
I always say I have an observation to share with you. Would you like me to share it with you? Maybe not.
we teach a class that's a full weekend course that's all about ending that cycle of blame and stepping into your own authentic power and the difference between power and force, and it's just an amazing course. It's called Freedom to Be and Embracing Life Experience, and it's going to be happening down here in South Florida in March of next year.
This is a perfect time to make sure that people know your website and some of your work that you're doing and so forth. Go ahead, Maggie.
Oh, wonderful. Well, the website is wholeheartedparenting.com, and I teach a course called The Joy of Parenting, which is how parents can discipline very positively and how they can be joyful. Often when our kids were born and they were little, we were incredibly joyful. And then something happened along the way where our kids weren't exactly doing what we wanted them to do, and suddenly our happiness became dependent on what our kids were doing. This is about how to be happy and joyful. That was loud.
I was going to say, we might want to be hanging up soon here.
How to be happy and joyful no matter what your kids are doing. We also have workshops the first Saturday of every month for parents, and those are great. They're on some hot-button topics for parents, including how to regain your joy as a parent. And then we have the Freedom to Be course coming up in March. So if people want to go to the website, those courses will be out there. We have a free newsletter that comes out every Tuesday that people can subscribe to.
Excellent. And that's all on your website. That's where they can find all this information.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Roz or Maggie, I'm thinking we should move on. Go ahead.
With one last takeaway that everyone can benefit from and keeping in mind during parenting is tough. It always is.
It's a practice.
And Joanie and I always talk about the fact that to remind ourselves that we're also role models for our kids in everything that we do. So they're watching and learning in the good as well as the bad sides of our parenting. Do you have any comments about that?
Well, the kids do learn from what they see us do. I mean, kids really do, like 89 or 95% of what they do is what they see us do, rather than what we say. Mm-hmm. And so it is very important to be conscious and mindful of what we're modeling. And that gets back to everything that we talked about today, to show them how to process hurt and pain and what you're going through in a healthy way. To model taking great care of yourself so that your kids will take great care of themselves. To model sharing emotions and to model listening, which again doesn't mean fixing anything. It doesn't even mean saying anything necessarily or doing anything. It could mean saying, really, or uh-huh, or tell me some more about that, or it sounds like. You don't even have to say a full sentence. You just need to be present and interested.
Yes. Great advice.
Perfectly. Well said. Well said.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie McCauley from Wholehearted Parenting. You've been a wonderful guest. We've learned a lot. You really had some great wisdom to share. That's especially of value in for families that are going through divorce on any level. So thank you so much. Joanie,
Oh.
you say goodbye?
Yes, definitely. And Maggie, thanks again. And to all our listeners, tune in every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can check out all our previous shows on divorceview.com, and also you can learn about how Roz supports you and how I support you as well. Lots of great information there. So go to divorceview.com. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.